Hi everyone, it is Wednesday, it's 4:30, it means it's the ViaMonstra Academy office hours. My name is Johan, I'll be your host for the next hours. Next hour. This is where you can ask questions on MDT, Intune, ConfigMgr, PowerShell, Azure, pretty much anything Microsoft infrastructure and OS deployment. Normally, I have Andrew with me in this session, but apparently his organization is playing network outage at the moment. So we'll see if he'll be able to join or not. Otherwise, I'll be happy to take care of you. Now, that being said, if you have any questions, send them in on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. We are sending to all those three channels together with Twitter. But the only downside with Twitter is I cannot see those questions coming in. So I recommend using the other three channels for questions. So with that, let the questions start. All right. So I do have a window up here open with the chats from LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to post them there. And while we're waiting, wanted to share you some of the updates regarding Intune and ConfigMgr for the last few days, at least if not to get the questions going here. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. There we go. So for a start, for those of you that are attending the Microsoft Ask Me Anything sessions last week, you'll learn that Microsoft is bringing back some missed functionality for Autopilot. And Rudy tweeted this morning that this latest update does indeed restore that functionality to Autopilot. Let me just borrow this link. For those of you who are new to the office hours, we do share these links on both the Academy as well as on YouTube. So on the Academy site, if you scroll down to office hours, this is where you find links from all previous sessions as well as all the recordings. But you can also go to our YouTube channel, ViaMonstra Online Academy. And for example, if you take a look at last week, which was that one, and scroll down and click more, this is where we have all the links, etc., that we were sharing last week. So this one usually gets posted tomorrow. The other one usually comes up later today or early morning, but you will find the links over there. So let me just grab that link before I forget. Autopilot. And then we also have on my blog, Deployment Research, I posted some highlights from the Autopilot session that happened last week, where they discussed a little bit about those features. So you can either check the recording here, or you can go directly to their event page, where you see, of course, a link to the recording as well, but you also have all the questions that were asked during the session. So I picked up a few that I liked in this blog post, my favorite top 10, but there were like 120 some comments in total in the session. So good thing there. So if you haven't seen this one, I will save that link as well for you. And there you go. Another update from this morning is Panu, one of the ConfigMgr MVPs. He reminded us about the importance of putting a hotfix in place for ConfigMgr 2203. And basically, if you are not on ConfigMgr and are using tenant attach, if you're not on ConfigMgr 2203 and are using tenant attach, you kind of have to update like right now, because today is the last day for the old certificate. And if you don't have that certificate in place or that update in place, you will start to see some errors when you try to do client-side actions through the MEM portal here. So make sure you have this rollup installed, preferably today. There is also an option for customers to actually reach out, open a support ticket with Microsoft if you are on an older version of ConfigMgr. So the recommendation is to upgrade to this and then apply the hotfix. But if you can't, for many reasons, you have to open a support ticket and get help that way. Install the hotfix, as you probably know these days, is fairly straightforward. Just go to servicing node, install the hotfix, reboot, done, and you are good to go there. But again, this is only needed if you are using cloud attach options here in ConfigMgr and you are using tenant attach features there. Let's see what else. I don't see any questions yet, but if you do have any questions, by all means, put them in there and I'll be happy to answer those. Let's see here. Yep, looks good. All right. Shannon posted a link earlier today. I saw it on Twitter earlier today. The post is actually a little bit older, but Shannon posted an article on how you can do screen share from out-of-box experience. So say that you're troubleshooting Autopilot and you want to be able to help a user getting through the process. This is how you can do it. This was a feature that's been available for years, but when Microsoft did their update to the Quick Assist app, they kind of broke it and kind of figured out a way, basically a script that you save and run in the environment that give you back that functionality again. So beautiful solution, and highly recommend to play around and test it. So I'm gonna save that link, and I'm gonna select that link too. All right, I think that was all of the posts I wanted to share, early at least. By all means, if you want to check out the other sessions from Microsoft's Ask Me Anything sessions, you have their entire YouTube channel here. So this one, the Windows IT Pro channel, great source for information. So I put that up in the link too. All right, I think that was pretty much it. We've done that one, and we've done that one. All right. Do you have any questions? Any questions at all? I'll be happy to answer. And I hope the synchronization solution I'm using is functioning correctly, so I don't miss any links. All right, Richard is asking on LinkedIn here. We are in the middle of an instance migration, but I'm unable to upgrade because of the migration to Link. If I stop data gathering, will I lose the current data as far as migrated content? Oh, it was years since I did a data migration. Let's see here. So if you have a source hierarchy specified, as long as you haven't run the cleanup migration data, in theory, it should keep it. But I haven't tested that in a while, especially not when going from like a lab setup into a production type. It's quite common that you use the migration to publish things between dev and dev and prod or pre-prod and prod. But that's the theory I have, at least, that as long as you don't run the cleanup, it should keep the information that you had. Not sure if you will have to delete any migration jobs or not when you remove that, but yeah, that's a bit of a gamble. So that's the best answer I have on that one for now. Great question, though. Let's see, another question coming in on LinkedIn. It's Dawn asking, or basically they're having troubles with sequences where the sequence work on the primary but fails with policy download failures on other two primaries. So I'm assuming this, of course, is in a CAS environment. I only have one customer that I worked with that is actually using a CAS, and I don't recognize that type of issue. Moments like this, you wish that you would have a Mike Terrill around, because he works with that every single day. Dawn, I would recommend giving Mike a ping. He said he might join the session today. And he's pretty good at responding. I was on a call earlier, so let's see. Twitter. Here we go. This gentleman has spent a stupid amount of hours working in a CAS environment using sequences, much more than I have. So reach out to Mike and see if you have any ideas on that one. That would be my recommendation. Interesting that it started. I just saw the follow-up comment there. New sequences created on 2203. Out of curiosity, did you have the rollup hotfix installed on that environment? Because I remember seeing there were some issues with sequences in the original release of 2203 that was actually fixed in the rollup, specifically for sequences and policies. I'll put that link in the section, and putting him on the spot here as well. But Mike, is usually quite good in answering to questions for the community. So he can yell at me later if not. All right. Other than that, in terms of log files, there would be the policy provider log file on the different primaries to see if they have problems generating a policy. That's the only thing I can come up with at the moment. All right, good question though. It's funny that your old sequences still work, and it's only the new one that are giving you a headache. And I just got a follow-up comment there from Dawn, and they are up on the latest hotfix as well. So, all right, thank you for the update. Let's see, another question coming in on LinkedIn. I cannot PXE boot VMware on UEFI, but works fine on BIOS settings. What can I fix this issue? I have not had any troubles booting VMware VMs either on UEFI. Possibly test lower block sizes and see if that does it. It depends a little bit on what type of error you're getting. If it's just a timeout, you can play around with window size and block size. I remember back in the days that some of the older VMware ESX versions, they were a little bit sensitive when you change the block size too high, that they simply wouldn't accept that. Newer ESX versions, they fix that problem. A good resource for those settings, Jürgen have on his blog, ccmexec.com. If you search his blog for TFTP, you get an indication at least that back in 2016, Jürgen had a lot of spare time because he was basically comparing a bunch of different deployment settings for block size and window size together with a stopwatch for different computers. And normally this is the sweet spot. We have covered this a few times here in office hours, but usually this setting here, an 8K block size with a 2 window size, works on most hardware. But back in the days, I remember that VMware had problems going higher than 4 on the block size. So maybe play around and test with those if that's the case. Obviously, depending on what PXE provider you're using, make sure they actually have signed EFI binaries if you are doing secure boot and UEFI enable at the same time. You can obviously try to disable secure boot temporarily and just keep UEFI, because you can always enable it back on later and see if that solved the PXE boot problem. But this is a good link collection if not. And these, even though this was back in 2016, all these registry keys, they are also for the new responder in ConfigMgr. And that's something you also can try out to see if it behaves differently. Because as most of you probably know, ConfigMgr comes with 2 different PXE responders. So one that is here. One that is based on WDS, and in this case, one that is not. So this is the ConfigMgr team's own PXE responder. It's more lightweight. It can be installed on both clients and servers. It's usually the preferred one because it's more it's not as heavy as the legacy Windows Deployment Services based PXE responder. So you can play around with that. What else? You can definitely use a little bit of, so the company I work for, 2Pint, or one of the companies I work for, I should say, we sell a PXE responder for ConfigMgr as well. And every PXE responder, you troubleshoot the same way. So we have a little post that I've shared a few times here. iPXE troubleshooting, Wireshark. So this one here is a post I wrote last year, or maybe a year ago. So this one is quite useful, because what you basically do in that scenario is that you spin up one Hyper-V VM with Wireshark or whatever tool you like to trace network in, and you configure that one for port mirroring, and you set it to destination. And then you take a test client that is just a blank VM, and you configure that one to be mirroring a source. So now the monitoring VM will see all the PXE traffic to your other VM. Of course, you have to do this in VMware. I'm just showing you how to do this in Hyper-V, but VMware has similar functionality for more mirroring of ports. But that way you can check the traffic and try to see what's going on there. So a few different options to troubleshoot PXE. Hope that any of those will help. My good friend Andreas, he also wrote a PowerShell script that fakes a PXE boot that you can run in Windows. So if you go to a machine, and let's see, I have a copy of that script somewhere here. Yeah, this one. If you run that one, it will kind of fake a PXE deployment and show you things like the NetBIOS or a boot file to use and the PXE server IP address, etc. Some IP information. Can also be useful for troubleshooting. If you haven't seen that one, we have that up on our GitHub page. PXE Troubleshooter. I'll put that in a link as well. All right. Great questions. Was another, let's see, there was another question coming in on LinkedIn here. What has been your experience with Wake Up on client notifications? It's been pretty good, especially compared to the old one. Just to let me share what I mean here. ConfigMgr comes with two different Wake on LANs solutions. I believe I blogged about it at some point. Yeah. So this was a blog post regarding doing the configuration that the client needs to have to support Wake on LAN. And there are other community posts out there on how to do that. I decided to do it with the baseline. There are other solutions out there as well. But basically stay away from this option here that you have on the site properties. And instead, indeed use the client settings instead for this. Much more reliable when doing Wake on LAN. So to answer the question, yeah, the new client-side notifications that you will see if you go to a collection. See, I have a few Dell machines here somewhere. Then you do a client notification and you wake them up. As long as there is at least one client on that subnet, the other ones will wake up happily. So make sure you have at least one machine running when doing this. This new method, or newer since it came in 8 and 10, it's less likely to cause a sort of a broadcast storm of Wake on LAN traffic, which the old one happened to do sometimes. So in my experience, it's been pretty okay. All right, let's see. Any other questions? We have a whopping 34 more minutes to spare. All right, let's see here. Another question coming in on LinkedIn. Usually when installing a site system role on a remote server, I use a nested group where basically the site server, the primary site server is a member of that group, and that group is a local admin on the service which holds the roles. Recently, I've had several sites failing basically when doing so. Have you come across this? I have not, but I also do the old school approach that when I add, this has nothing to do with it, this is a PXE configuration, I simply add the site server itself into the local admin group on my remote site systems. And when doing so, I haven't had any troubles with any roles being added. Should in theory work with nested groups like that, but if you do have a problem, by all means add in the site server. It doesn't change very often, so you only need that site server in the group. So hopefully that will help. Let's see. Another question coming in on LinkedIn from Richard. This may be out of scope, but wondering if you had experience with domain consolidation and if there are better tools than ADMT to migrate machines. It's been a while, but I've been through quite a good chunk of AD migration projects. The easier one back then, we absolutely did use the ADMT tools. The more complex one, for example, we worked with the university over in Sweden a few years back. They were migrating 21 institutions with different ADs into one. And for that environment, we ended up using tools from Quest that offered more options and would simply simplify the migration. So maybe look into that as well. It all depends on the complexity of the setup. Normally, an ADMT tool will happily migrate the objects. It will restamp the profiles that you may have around. But I haven't used that tool in probably a good decade. I'm not sure how valid it still is, if it's being updated or not. But if anyone else happen to know, by all means, send a message here in the chat or reach out to me and I'll be happy to share it, that information. So, yeah, domain consolidation is usually, the technical part of it is usually the easier part if you have the right tool. It's usually the politics that come in play that is the harder one. It needs to be someone to basically put their foot down and say, all right, this is what we're going to do. The rest of you have to deal with it. When I did that large migration I mentioned earlier, the problem was not that there were 21 different environments. The problem was that we have 21 different IT admins or managers even that have their own will. So that was fun. All right. Any other questions? Dum-dum-dum-dum. If you have any, I'll be happy to answer. Another question coming in on LinkedIn. Do you know if the new profiles in Office or Config Office Com will be moved to Intune? The reporting is nice. I do not know. I can show you the link here so you guys know what I was asked about. So this one here. If all these new profiles are coming over to Intune, I haven't heard. The Intune 2207 service release is about to be rolled out or already started to roll out. So I might be interested to look into that one, but I haven't heard anything. But if anyone happen to know, by all means, let me know and I'll share the info. Any other questions? don't see any others, but I'll stick around a little bit if you have any more questions coming in. Well, another news, I was checking the memcm hashtag on Twitter at the moment, and it appears that Niall Brady just posted an article that showcased the new migration options in ConfigMgr 2207, currently in technical preview, but since I know it's been rolled out to a few top customers already, I expect it to be released the next few weeks here. Maybe this is one of those ConfigMgr Fridays, who knows? But this is an interesting part. I wrote about this in our newsletter. And speaking of that newsletter, if you haven't signed up for it, by all means, we send out these monthly with info on anything MDT, ConfigMgr, Intune, and whatnot. We call it deployment news. So if you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend subscribing. But in that newsletter, we talked about the feature, but Niall actually did a complete test and a video for it. So it's all about using PowerShell to migrate content, and the idea is to not having to replicate content out to DP the normal way, but to speed up that migration a bit. So I'll put the link for that one in the chat as well. All right, let's see. Another question coming in on LinkedIn. This is from Richard. I have a bunch of machines that I have to manually connect in order to force the monthly updates to install. Is there a PowerShell script that can be used to force a bunch of machines? You can definitely leverage client notifications or the Recast Tools to force machine policies or the software updates action if that's the case. There is a community edition of it. I've been using Recast Tools or the right-click tools for years and years and years. If you go to recastsoftware.com, these right-click tools are downright amazing. So let me see if I find the overview session. Put that in the link collection. Of course, if you can convince your organization to actually buy the real version, fantastic. But even the community version is downright amazing. I have it in most of my lab environments, but it does allow me to right-click a collection and get a bunch of different actions available. And these actions is normally better than the built-in one in ConfigMgr. For example, if you do a hardware inventory cycle here, you get a question, would you like to do a delta or a full? Whereas ConfigMgr only does delta. The same goes for software inventory, but this is also where you have the others. But this tool, downright amazing. Highly recommend to install that extension to ConfigMgr. Good stuff for sure. So that, Richard, should help you enforce scans. So if you have machines that, for whatever reason, doesn't do it manually. That's assuming that they are managed by ConfigMgr, but I kind of guessed that since your earlier question. If there are a standalone, there are some scripts out there that can be used as well. There's a PowerShell script up on PowerShell Gallery that forces a Windows update. Some organizations, they are even borrowing the good old no thank you the good old Windows update script from MDT. and use that one. So in the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit download, if you go to, let's see if I put that here. This one. I've even seen ConfigMgr customers using this one instead of the software updates action in sequences, just to have them update themselves. So there are some different options available there. If it's just a single machine, you can use other tools as well. But for scripting, I recommend that the one on PowerShell Gallery or the one in MDT, because those are the one I've been using for like standalone solutions that are not managed through ConfigMgr. Aryan is asking, hi Johan, have you been working with Azure Arc? I have not. I was pretty happy to read about their new preview of updates management through Azure, or Azure management, but I haven't played around and tested with it. I know one who has though. He's one of our instructors here on the academy. He runs our Azure masterclasses, David O'Brien. He also ran our Azure courses, the 6-week-long courses. And I would definitely recommend reaching out to David. And if you have any question around Azure Arc there, he knows Azure better than most. All right. Any other questions? There was an interesting comment on that question from Arian here on YouTube also. And that was basically, do I think that cloud server management for servers will eventually replace ConfigMgr? That's it depends really. I obviously don't know the answer, but organizations that keep ConfigMgr around, I don't see them easily switch to cloud management for updates, because you have so many knobs and things that you can work on in ConfigMgr to do software updates for servers. But if you work for an organization where you're actively going away from an on-premise config manager solution, yes, you need to take care of server management or patches one way or another. And since Intune doesn't do servers, you have to use something else. And I think for those environments that are switching to cloud only, basically, without the co-managed scenario or having them both available, yeah, I think they will obviously use something to do that. But it's on my to-do list to test for sure. Looks like an interesting thing to work with. Any other questions? Can see if I can find that link to the Azure preview feature I was mentioning earlier. Nope, did not find that one. Searching skills are not. Here we go. This was the one I was referring to earlier that was in a preview. So this one might be interesting if you're looking to do updates management through or updates compliance for your servers and patching. So I'll put that link in the chat collection as well. I like to say we mentioned it last week, but I don't remember on the top of my head whether we shared the link or not. All right. Any other questions? Hope I didn't miss anything earlier. No, I don't think so. We do have another 18 minutes available, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them in on either Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. For those of you that arrived a little bit later, if you are on ConfigMgr or using ConfigMgr and you are cloud attached, make absolutely sure to put this hotfix in place today, or client actions may fail in the mem console for those devices. I shared a knowledge base article earlier about this. Let's see if I can bring it up again. Because today is that deadline. So, patching time. Here is the information about it. And today is it. Oh, today it is. John is asking on YouTube, what time zone is the deadline for this hotfix? I have absolutely no idea. I don't know what time zone they are. When will it go out? But update as soon as possible. There is no info in the article about it. But it's fairly easy to test. Just run the client action and see if it breaks. All right. Richard had a question on the Community Hub. Is there a way, Community Hub rights or permissions, is there a way to override the default permissions for roles like Application Manager? Will a custom role override the built-in roles? I have not seen or worked with any role settings for the Community Hub. And the Community Hub, for those of you that are new, this one here in ConfigMgr. So I don't know if there is an option to override any default permissions for a role like Application Manager. So that was something I have to try out. It's not something I've tested, unfortunately. As usual, if any one of you that are listening happen to know, by all means, share that info, and I'll be happy to share it as well. Any other questions? Still 14 minutes to go, so you have the chance. All right, I don't see any questions, any more questions coming in. Friendly reminder, we do post the links up on our office hours section here on the Academy. Oh, there was one question coming in. Even better, so an MDT question. I like those. It's on YouTube. Hey, I have an MDT questions. I'm doing BitLocker on standalone clients. This is done with a custom script. How would I best go about presenting the recovery key on the final summary page? If you want to change what's shown up in the summary page, you would have to customize that script that shows that summary page. But MDT does save that recovery key temporarily as a text file during deployment. So obviously you can read that one, save it as a variable if you want, and show it up as a like a last step in the sequence, for example. Or you can have a post-install task that shows that one. I have been using what I call a final configuration task over the years for MDT, where I display something in the end of the setup. So basically, I launch it in a way. So this is just an HDA. You can do the same with PowerShell if you want, but it just displays after the sequence has ended. And in this one, you can have it display anything. It's just an HDA page. So if you want some samples you can play around with, this would be a good one. I will save the link in the chat there. Here. Or in the link section, I should say. This might be a better option than to modify the default scripts. Sure enough, MDT is not being updated anymore these days, so there are no updates that are risking to actually break it. But in the past, if you made modifications to the default MDT scripts and Microsoft made an update, they usually overwrote what you did. So I recommend to just launch a separate script like this in the end of your sequence that displays whatever you want it to display. All right. Let's see. Alan is asking on YouTube, is there a way to create dynamic device groups in Intune based off users department field? So Microsoft actually have a documentation about what fields that are available for user groups and device groups. Let's see, dynamic device group Intune. Yeah, so here is the user properties. Let's see if there are devices somewhere also. Devices. Department is not for device. So you would have, I actually had a customer I worked with, they wrote a script for a graph that looked up the device for a user, and they used that to populate the group. So if it's not, I'm just going to search for department here to just make sure I didn't miss it. So that is still the user one. No. Department does not exist for devices, so you have to have a script that correlates them two together and builds the group based on that instead. And of course, you can run that script as often as you want to keep that group dynamically populated. If anyone else have a better option for it, by all means, let me know and I'll share the information. But I will share this link in the chat as well. All right. Any other questions? Right, I don't see any others. So once again, on the Academy site, you find the links and the recordings. On the YouTube site or channel, if you look at previous, not that one, but this one, you will also find links under each of the videos that will come up. So different ways to get access to them. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for the many good questions, and I hope to see you guys next week. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.